Have you ever looked at something you once absolutely adored, I mean, a true titan in its field, and just felt it's lost its way?
Oh, definitely.
Like it's stuck, unable to evolve, maybe slowly losing that spark that made it legendary in the first place.
Yeah, it happens. You see these incredible long-running franchises that just seem to get trapped by their own history, their own success even.
Exactly. So how does that happen? How does a design that was once totally pioneering become, well, a burden?
It's a fascinating question.
And why do the simplest, boldest choices often turn out to be the strongest? We see that pattern sometimes.
Right. Cutting through the complexity.
And what happens when a company, even a multi-billion-dollar one, seems to just ignore its players for years and years, only to eventually, maybe way too late, admit that what the players wanted was the right path all along?
It's a paradox, isn't it?
Hmm.
What was revolutionary becomes a weight. That clear vision gets obscured by decades of additions, layers, compromises. It just gets complicated.
Yeah, it's a common story, especially in the digital world, for things that stick around.
Absolutely.
And today, we are taking a deep dive into precisely that phenomenon. We're focusing on the really compelling case of World of Warcraft.
A true giant.
A giant, yeah. Not just any game. It's a flagship title for a massive company, a global phenomenon that basically redefined a whole genre. But now, many people feel it's genuinely trapped in its past.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack why a design that was once totally cutting edge can become a burden, why simple, bold design choices are often the strongest, and how player desires, even when they seem ignored for ages, eventually become the undeniable, sometimes really painful path forward for these huge companies.
And what's really insightful here, the source material we're drawing from,
Yeah.
it's this fascinating brainstorm session. One person laid out this really radical vision for revival.
Okay.
And what makes it stand out is how an AI analyzed it and basically broke down exactly why this path isn't just, interesting, but maybe critically important.
So like data backing up the gut feeling.
Kind of, yeah. It gives us this rare look at how you might strip away decades of bloat to find that powerful core idea underneath.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So get ready for some surprising facts, maybe some genuine aha moments, and perhaps a bit of design thinking that might just make you wonder, why haven't they done this already?
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start with the big, maybe uncomfortable truth that really kicks off this whole discussion. World of Warcraft, the, once undisputed king of online gaming, it's struggling.
That's putting it mildly for some observers.
Yeah, the observation is it's just not attracting young players. And honestly, even its longtime fans, the veterans, they're losing interest too. It's widely seen as feeling old and dusty.
That's the core observation, yeah. And it's stark, isn't it? For a game that was such a cultural juggernaut.
It really was.
Millions played it, entire communities were built. Azeroth was like a second home for so many people. But the gaming landscape has changed so dramatically around it. New players, they're stepping into a totally different world. They're coming from games like Fortnite Instant Action, high energy, low commitment.
Right, jump in, jump out.
Or Genshin Impact, beautiful open world, engaging combat, play solo or co-op, no heavy sub fee.
Very accessible.
And then you've got Destiny 2, blending MMO stuff with shooter mechanics, fast-paced, console-friendly. So when a young player used to these rapid-fire, often free-to-play games, tries World of Warcraft, it's just a different beast.
Yeah.
It feels intimidating, the learning curve is steep, and frankly, the core mechanics, even with graphical updates, can feel often boring compared to what they're used to.
And you see this cycle, right? The nostalgia cycle. I'll admit, I've done it myself.
Oh, me too.
We, the old players, we come back for like a few weeks of hype when there's a new expansion or a classic server re-release.
That pull is strong.
It's pure nostalgia, isn't it? That longing for what the game was when we were younger, maybe had more free time, all our friends were online.
Simpler times, maybe.
We remember the magic, exploring a new zone, that first raid boss kill, the guild camaraderie. But then reality sinks in, the magic, it's often gone, or at least, muted. That gameplay loop just doesn't hit the same way.
Yeah, the repetition maybe stands out more.
You find yourself facing these familiar grindy systems, this constant push for numbers, for gear, and the huge time commitment it demands: daily quests, raid schedules, long dungeons.
It asks a lot of you.
And for many of us whose lives have changed jobs, families, just less free time, that high commitment, the massive barrier. It turns a hobby into a chore.
Exactly.
So it becomes this fleeting visit, right? A quick trip down memory lane, and then we log off again, maybe for another year, wondering if it'll ever really feel like it used to.
It's a poignant situation, really, for players and the developers. And this brings us right to what our source calls Blizzard's caught-in-a-trap paradox.
Okay, the paradox.
This is where it gets really insightful, I think. It exposes the core dilemma for a company managing a legacy game like this. The situation is stark.
Mm-hmm.
If they change too much in World of Warcraft, the existing old fans riot. They get incredibly vocal. Frustration, betrayal, sometimes they leave in droves.
Yeah, you see the forum threads.
And it's not just casual disagreement, right? It's deep. These players have invested years, decades sometimes, of their lives, their social connections, their emotions into this world. They have muscle memory, attachments to abilities, lore, even outdated systems.
It's part of their identity in a way.
Absolutely. So when fundamental things change, it feels like the soul of the game they love is being messed with or erased. We've seen it happen with talent tree changes, new power systems. There's always a group that feels alienated.
It's like walking on eggshells trying to please everyone, almost impossible.
It really is.
Because on the flip side, if Blizzard doesn't change enough,
The new players never stick.
right,
They download it, try it out, hit that overwhelming depth or the dated feel, the steep curve.
and they're gone, bounce right off.
It's like trying to get someone hooked on book 15 of a massive fantasy series when they haven't read the first 14, and book 15 feels like it was written 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Exactly. And this is why a multi-billion-dollar company with huge resources finds itself stuck in this seemingly impossible position.
So the age isn't just the release date, it feels old.
Precisely. The very foundation is built on what the source calls legacy design. Let's unpack that a bit.
Okay.
We're talking about things like tab target combat. Click or tab to select an enemy, your character auto-attacks, you hit your hotbar abilities.
Standard MMO fare for a long time.
It worked well back then, prioritizing precision, complex rotations when graphics were simpler. But compare it to modern action RPGs or even other MMOs with dynamic dodging, skill shots, impactful movement. Tab targeting can feel very static, almost like a spreadsheet simulator sometimes.
Yeah, there's not that kinetic feel, that visceral impact.
Exactly, or lack thereof. Then there's the user interface. He's customizable with add-ons, hugely so.
True, the modding community is incredible.
But the core UI often feels cluttered, less intuitive than the streamlined, minimalist UIs you see in modern games.
Right.
And the world itself, Azeroth. It's beautiful, iconic, but it's burdened by decades of convoluted story. Imagine being a new player trying to make sense of 20 years of lore, retcons, forgotten characters, time travel.
It's impenetrable.
It really can be.
Yeah.
And no amount of graphical polish or borrowed systems from modern MMOs can hide these fundamental issues forever.
Yeah.
You can repaint an old car, put new rims on it, LED lights.
Still the same engine underneath.
Exactly. Still got the same engine, the same chassis. It just wasn't built for today's roads or today's drivers.
Which leads us to that critical question, why the delay? Why the resistance to radical change, especially when, like you said, the writing seems to be on the wall? Why are players seemingly ignored while the game's just slowly fading?
Yeah, why the lag?
The analysis we're looking at points out it's complex. It's deeply ingrained in how these big companies work.
Yeah. The first big reason, and maybe the most obvious, is just the sheer risk. Any radical overhaul is really risky.
Terrifying for stakeholders, I bet.
Absolutely. Fans are deeply attached to what World of Warcraft was. Not just casual attachment years, decades of emotional investment, community identity.
Right.
The fear of alienating that existing player base, even if it's shrinking, is enormous. There's still a known paying group. The potential backlash, the negative press, losing that steady revenue, it's a powerful deterrent.
So it feels safer to manage a slow decline than risk a sudden crash.
Often, yeah. That's the calculation. Conscious or not, it's the classic innovator's dilemma playing out.
And then there's what the source calls the revenue machine mentality. The current live game, even with its problems, even fading, is still a revenue machine for Blizzard. We're talking hundreds of millions a year from subs, expansions, microtransactions.
It's still a huge business.
So it's incredibly hard for a multi-billion-dollar company to willingly turn off or even seriously disrupt that steady income stream, even if they know it's diminishing long-term.
You don't kill the golden goose, even if it's laying fewer eggs.
Right. It pushes them towards incremental changes, not the bold, potentially disruptive moves that might actually be needed. It's like trying to change a tire on a moving car because stopping feels too dangerous.
Keep the machine running, even if it's sputtering.
Yeah.
And that analogy works internally too. Blizzard's development pipeline, its teams, they're deeply rooted in legacy tech and team structures built around the existing game.
Okay.
Imagine trying to retool a factory designed to make one car model to suddenly make something totally different. New materials, new processes.
Massive upheaval.
It's monumental. It's not just changing code. It's retraining people, overhauling tools, untangling 2 decades of duct tape fixes and workarounds baked into the system. It makes fundamental change incredibly hard, slow, and expensive. Often needs a whole new team, a new vision, which the current structure isn't built for.
So the hard truth then, WoW isn't dying overnight, no, but it is certainly fading, and it perfectly illustrates this critical challenge for any super successful, long-running digital thing.
Yeah.
The players aren't necessarily ignored out of, like, malice, but the company's stuck between protecting the cash cow and trying to innovate while fighting its own internal inertia and the fear of upsetting the existing fans.
It creates this situation where radical, necessary change gets delayed and delayed, often only really considered when the decline becomes impossible to ignore.
Which brings us finally to a radical idea, a proposal that directly tackles these problems head-on, a potential blueprint for rebirth.
Yes, let's get into that.
This brings us to a really bold proposal laid out in the analysis we're looking at. A true Warcraft revival, not just, another patch or expansion.
Something fundamental.
The visionary idea is this. Take old game world, delete everything except world structure, maps itself, modernize static assets, and build a whole new dynamic world on top of that with new systems, gameplay, etc., using a new engine, UE5.
Wow. Okay, that's bold.
Right. Delete everything except the map.
What's compelling, though, is that this isn't just some random forum wish. The AI response in our source actually called it the most grounded, realistic pitch for a true World of Warcraft revival.
Grounded? Really? Deleting everything sounds pretty wild.
Well, grounded in the sense that it acknowledges the deep systemic issues, the bloat, the tech debt, the player fatigue we just talked about. It suggests a clean slate, but crucially, preserves the most valuable, maybe often overlooked core elements. It's suggesting it's the kind of bold moves Blizzard would need if they ever wanted to recapture cultural relevance.
Okay. I see the logic. And this leads us right to one of our main points today. Why is simple design often the strongest? This proposal is all about deconstructing that, finding strength in simplicity. First up, keep the bones, throw out the rust.
Yeah, I love that phrase. It's brilliant because it preserves the core identity while allowing for huge change. The fundamental map structure, the geography of Azeroth, is explicitly called the strongest asset of the IP.
The land itself.
Exactly. Think about it. Stormwind, Orgrimmar, the Barrens, Elwyn Forest, Stranglethorn Vale. These places are etched into the memory of millions. That nostalgia for places is incredibly powerful, even if the quests or NPCs or systems inside them are gone or totally changed.
You don't throw out the map.
You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right. You keep that foundation, that geographic canvas that still resonates. It's an immediate hook, an emotional connection for old and even new players who've heard of these iconic locations.
And then comes the really radical part, the decluttering. This is called the real key to wipe the slate clean. What does that actually mean, though?
In practice, it means surgically removing that endless bloat of old systems, borrowed mechanics, and years of tech debt.
Okay, bloat, like all those temporary expansion systems.
Exactly. Artifact power, Azerite armor, covenants, different legendary systems. Each one added a new layer of grind, new rules to learn, only to be totally reset and made irrelevant next expansion.
Yeah, the treadmill.
Players felt like they were constantly running on this vertical treadmill, putting in massive effort for power that just expired. That leads to burnout, the feeling that your time invested was ultimately wasted.
And tech debt. That's the code stuff.
That's all the quick fixes, the workarounds, the outdated code that piles up over 20 years of patching an old engine. It makes development slow, buggy, prevents implementing truly modern features, like building a skyscraper on, crumbling foundations.
Makes sense.
The proposal also calls for killing the lore that's grown too convoluted and tired, and letting go of the sacred cows.
Whoa, killing the lore. That's fighting words for some fans.
It's deeply risky, absolutely. But the source emphasizes it's absolutely necessary. The lore, while cherished by some, has become incredibly dense, often contradictory. It's a huge barrier for new players. And secret cows are those design things like the rigid quest structure, maybe certain redesigns that feel untouchable but are holding the game back.
So it's about radical simplification, cutting through decades of clutter to find that strong, simple core again. Okay, so beyond just cleaning up, the vision includes modernizing and reimagining assets. Not just a paint job, right?
Right, much more than that. It's about fundamentally rethinking the visual fidelity. Update all the art, yes, but truly reimagine it. Higher fidelity models, better environmental storytelling through the visuals, dynamic lighting, all enabled by a new engine like Unreal Engine 5.
What kind of impact could UE5 have? People talk about it a lot.
Potentially massive, transformative. Technologies like Nanite and Lumen. Nanite handles geometry, letting devs use incredibly detailed assets without performance hits. Think film quality detail in-game.
Wow.
And Lumen is dynamic global illumination. Light bounces realistically, changes with time of day, weather. It creates incredibly atmospheric, lifelike scenes. Imagine Stormwind or Orgrimmar feeling cinematic without losing identity.
So same place, but feels totally new and alive.
Precisely.
Yes.
Retaining the style, but brought to life with dynamic lighting, subtle details, environmental storytelling the current engine just can't do. Making the familiar feel fresh and immersive, respecting the original of persons, but pushing boundaries.
Building on that, the proposal suggests building a whole new dynamic world. This sounds like moving away from the static theme park feel.
Exactly. Transforming it into a living, breathing place. Replacing static NPCs with dynamic behavior so the world actually responds to players and events.
Like what?
Factions, dynamically controlling regions, their influence shifting based on player actions, not just scripts. Meaningful weather, a blizzard makes travel harder, fog helps stealth, time of day matters.
Okay, interesting.
And quests would evolve organically from the world state, not just picked up from a static NPC with an exclamation mark. Moving away from kill 10 boars towards emergent narratives where the story unfolds around you. Your presence actually matters.
That sounds like a fundamental shift.
It is. And it extends to combat and progression, too, redefining them, shifting to an action combat hybrid, like Elder Scrolls Online, New World, maybe FFX6.
So switching tab target.
Mostly, yeah. For real dodging, active blocking, skill shots, a truly kinetic feel, where player skill and movement matter more than just button rotations.
And progressive.
Proposing classless or soft class systems to avoid role lock-in. More freedom. Instead of being locked into warrior, you spec into weapons, magic schools, utilities. Flexible, personalized builds.
Removes the whole LFG needs tank problem sometimes.
Exactly. Removes restrictive designs where your choices shape your experience and the world.
And all of this really hinges on embracing a new engine like UE5.
It has to, really.
Yeah.
The current engine is just too old, burdened by 20 years of those duct-tape fixes. Trying to force modern features onto it is inefficient, maybe impossible at some point.
Like putting rocket fuel in a steam engine.
Pretty much. A fresh UE5 base would shorten dev time with modern tools, asset libraries, better frameworks. It could even potentially allow for a third-party or community involvement down the line, official modding, player content tools. Game changer for longevity.
Building a foundation for the future, not just patching the past.
Precisely.
And then that final touch, the ultimate statement of simplicity. The name, just call it Warcraft.
Yeah. No subtitle, no online, no numbers.
That is bold.
It's not just naming. It's a bold reclaiming of the name that started it all, shedding the baggage of 2 decades of expansions and changes.
It's a clear signal.
A very clear signal. This isn't World of Warcraft anymore. It's a whole new world. It's a true evolution. Sets a tone that's clean, modern, grounded.
Like it's not chasing trends, it's setting the stage.
Exactly. Setting the stage for a new generation of MMORPGs. The simplicity of the name reflects the whole stripped-down, focused, player-centric design philosophy, a powerful way to signal rebirth.
Okay, so if the simple design is so strong and this vision seems so compelling, addressing so many issues, why haven't we seen it? Why the delay? This brings us back to that core question. Why do companies eventually seem to agree with players, but only after this huge, painful delay?
Yeah, why does it take so long for the message to get through or for action to be taken?
It feels like a testament to how stuck a billion-dollar company can get, right? Unable to shift until maybe the survival of the flagship is truly questioned.
It really circles back to those internal pressures, that caught-in-a-trap paradox we talked about. The risk aversion, managing the existing revenue, the legacy tech, the team structures. Yeah. It's all very real.
But the player's voice, The desire for this kind of game dynamic, player-driven, not a treadmill that doesn't just go away, does it?
No, it simmers, it builds. It's a constant hum on forums, social media, community talks. It becomes the elephant in the room that just gets bigger with every patch
Yeah.
that doesn't fundamentally fix things.
Right. The players, especially the long-term ones, they see the problems. They feel the bloat, the outdated systems, the lack of real impact, the treadmill.
They crave agency, a persistent world that feels alive, content that doesn't vanish with the next patch.
Yeah.
They're just tired of the resets.
And as the game maybe slowly fades, player numbers dip, the community feels less vibrant. That voice gets louder, maybe more desperate. And eventually, for a company facing lower returns, it becomes undeniable.
It's often only at that critical point, yeah. When the pain of doing nothing finally outweighs the perceived pain and risk of radical change, that these big organizations seriously consider a massive shift.
And what's fascinating is how this specific vision directly answers those long-ignored desires. It empowers players through what's called a sandbox-first design.
Right, fundamentally moving beyond those kill 10 boars chore lists, the constant expansion resets, the dev-dictated timelines that make it feel like a job.
Yeah, the second job feeling.
In many MMOs, you're just told what to do, where to go, what to collect. It's a prescribed path.
This is about true player agency, something people have been asking for in different ways for years. Instead of a linear funnel, this offers a dynamic world state where players can genuinely affect territory, economy.
Not just flavor text, actual impact.
Exactly. The world is the story, not the patch notes. You're not just following a script, you're shaping the ongoing story of Azeroth. Imagine player alliances genuinely shifting power balances, setting up trade routes that affect prices, building player-run towns.
Your actions having real, persistent consequences. That's the dream for many MMO players.
And progression becomes totally open-ended. It comes from skills developed through action, use a sword, get better at swords, choosing factions, perks from exploring, crafting, fighting. Not a rigid level grind.
Like Skyrim or Valheim, maybe,
Yeah,
where your character grows based on how you play, not just hitting an XP cap.
exactly. Putting the player experience and choice first, directly answering that desire for meaningful impact and persistent progress that current systems often deny.
Then there's this incredible idea. Modularity. Systems built like Lego bricks.
Lego bricks, okay.
Positioning the game as a platform, not a theme park, where everything is composable. Imagine being able to tailor fundamental gameplay elements to your preference or your guild's style.
That sounds huge, like really game-changing.
It is a real response to decades of players wanting more customization and control. The analysis gives examples like combat modules. Let players plug and play between the new action combat, or crucially, maybe even a modernized cab target mode for those who prefer it.
Wow, actual choice on something that fundamental.
Yeah, catering to different preferences. Or guilds, choosing custom leveling curves, custom PvP rules for their own server shards. Niche communities could thrive.
And UI customization in-game, not just add-ons.
An in-game drag-drop design system that makes the game future-proof and creator-friendly, really answering that player desire for granular control and personalization that's standard in modern online games.
And this modularity then enables what the source says would truly blow World of Warcraft open. Player-created content, tools, not just toys.
Right, not just making machinima or UI mods, giving players the power to build and contribute directly to the world.
Oh.
An in-game world editor, Forge style, think Halo's Forge, but massive scale. Let players build dungeons, towns, story experiences using pre-approved Blizzard assets.
Leveraging the community's creativity, which is immense.
Totally. Imagine a Blizzard-provided asset marketplace where players share, maybe even monetize their creations. Others remix them. And server templates, letting players spin up their own custom shards of Azeroth, like Valheim or ARK servers, but full fidelity, persistent.
The vision even suggests AI-assisted scripting, like describe a scenario and the AI helps generate functional content.
Yeah. Make a haunted crypt where a ghost gives you a cursed blade that corrupts over time, or generate quests where bandits kidnap villagers, players negotiate or fight. It transforms the game from a museum of static content into a sandbox MMO engine. Endless possibilities.
The outcome sounds huge. Endless replayability, community-driven evolution, fresh blood and innovation without depending entirely on Blizzard.
It effectively multiplies the development power, makes Azeroth feel alive again by handing real creative power to the community. Player voice becomes an engine, not just feedback.
The source also digs into addressing the game dying problem, persistent, meaningful progress. This is called a critical design pillar.
Yeah, this is key. It argues many MMOs die not from lack of content, but because the content demands big, rigid social structures, raid guilds, specific parties that eventually rot as lives change.
So this vision makes progress meaningful, even solo or small scale. A direct response to how people actually play now.
Absolutely. It proposes scalable systems. Events, dungeons, invasions scale based on who's actually there. Solo, scales for you. Small group, scales for them.
Okay.
And dynamic AI could simulate a lived-in feel, even in empty zones, phantom caravans, distant battle sounds, so your world always has something happening. You don't log into a ghost town.
And this is wild, offline compatible progression.
Revolutionary, right.
Yeah.
Explore, build, farm, progress in solo private mode, then later transfer your character and progress to public worlds.
So nothing is wasted. Progress always matters.
Exactly. Respects the player's time, their effort, regardless of how or when they play, solves a huge pain point for casual players or people with unstable connections.
Even player-run worlds are mentioned, like official support for private servers.
Kind of. Blizzard hosts the tech, players run private servers with full progression for small groups, removes the need for impersonal mega guilds, offers flexibility, caters to different social styles.
Then impact at every scale. How does that work?
Faction world influence would be tiered. Solo players have local impact. Clear a haunted town, see it rebuild. Small groups contribute to regional impact, help a faction expand. You don't need a massive raid team to feel like you're making a difference. Every action contributes to the persistent world.
And filling gaps with AI.
Procedurally generated quest lines, bounty boards, dungeon layers, to keep the world full, unpredictable, without constant dev-created content. Imagine a familiar dungeon, but the layout, enemies, objectives are slightly different each run.
The core philosophy seems really clear.
Crystal clear. The world is persistent, your progress is always valid, your time is never wasted, whether you're alone or leading a full-scale warband. Directly giving players what they've wanted, respect for their time and effort.
And maybe the most fundamental shift proposed, cutting against WoW's entire history. No leveling, no expansions, a living world, not a ladder.
Yeah, that's the big one. Completely eliminates that vertical treadmill. Raids, reset. It's a total reimagining of progression, directly addressing that reset fatigue, replaced by horizontal progression. Skills developed through action, factions matter, perks from exploring, crafting, fighting.
Like Zelda, BOTW, Elden Ring, Valheim.
Exactly that feeling. Power comes from discovery, learning, specializing, not just a number going up. It's world first, not grind first.
Yeah.
Focus shifts from XP bars to actually engaging with the world to grow your character.
What about iconic characters? Thrall, Jaina.
They stay, but are reimagined as living, evolving NPCs, reacting to the dynamic world state, taking sides in conflicts, not reset for expansion drama. Their stories feel organic, responsive to players and events, real inhabitants, not plot devices.
So content stays relevant.
Always relevant content. A village you helped rebuild might get overrun by demons months later due to world events. A forgotten temple becomes a treasure hunter hub. You're never done with content, you're just shaping it.
Eliminates the dead zone problem, where old expansions are ghost towns.
Exactly. Every part of the world stays potentially dynamic, relevant, directly giving players what they wanted. A game where their time always matters, their actions have a legacy.
Okay, so we've outlined the problems, explored this incredibly compelling, simple, player-focused vision. Now, why would this specific blueprint attract both old players and, crucially, new ones?
It really feels like a masterful blend, designed to hit the right notes for both groups. For old players, it offers nostalgia with purpose.
Purposeful nostalgia, I like that.
It's their beloved Azeroth, but reborn, actually evolving, not just nostalgia bait for a quick buck. There's no time pressure, because progression isn't that vertical treadmill. It's persistent engagement at your pace. True agency, seeing their actions matter. Meaningful engagement with legacy characters who evolve. It counters that treadmill fatigue that drove so many away. A reason to return and stay.
And for new players, why is this appealing?
It offers an incredibly attractive entry point. An open, accessible start with no levels, no 20-year backlog of confusing lore or systems to learn right away.
Less intimidating.
Much less. They can choose their path from day one, like in Minecraft or Zelda. The modular gameplay lets them tailor it, action combat, maybe tactical. It's co-op and solo ready, removing group pressure.
And the modern look and feel.
A world-first presentation with modern aesthetics and UX. That's huge. For a generation used to faster, more flexible, visually stunning games, it meets them where they are, doesn't demand they adapt to a 20-year-old design.
The art style and presentation are obviously key to hitting that balance. The source suggests avoiding extremes.
Yeah, avoiding full cartoon, which might alienate older players, and grimdark, which could limit accessibility. Aiming for stylized realism. That's crucial.
Like Pixar meets Middle-earth. That's evocative.
Isn't it? Characters with expressive features for depth, but grounded proportions and textures so they feel substantial. Environments that are vibrant, but not childish, emphasizing lighting, atmosphere, dynamic weather over just noisy detail.
Creating a world that feels alive, grand, inviting, but still distinctly Warcraft.
Exactly. A sweet spot with broad appeal, but a unique identity. Inspirations mentioned include Arcane for character depth, Breath of the Wild for open-world feel, God of War 2018 for world structure, Genshin Impact for visual accessibility, maybe the Fable reboot for mature stylized fantasy. A thoughtful mix.
Okay, so how on earth would you even start implementing something this radical yet simple at its core for a game this huge? The source actually lays out a roadmap.
Yeah, a surgical roadmap, breaking it down. Step 1, the clear priority. Map the old world, bring it to modern day.
Get the canvas ready.
Exactly. Port the continent and zone topology, the shapes, the layout into the new engine, UE5. Use tools like Lumen and Nanite for lighting, geometry. Focus isn't reinventing the world map, but faithfully translating it. Preserve Azeroth itself as the IP's strongest character, making the familiar feel fresh without losing identity. Build that robust, modern canvas first.
Okay, world shell is there. Step 2.
Bring in a few classes, old and new. Test what fits. Prototype, iconic archetypes, warrior, mage with those flexible, modular skill paths. Test the new combat. Maybe introduce entirely new archetypes to show evolution.
Get the core gameplay loop feeling right.
Exactly. Test the moment-to-moment feel combat interaction of the new engine, new design. Get the feel right before scaling up.
Then comes the painful part, throwing out the rest.
Step 3. Slowly delete old code and systems until only bare bones remain. Systematically review and replace core systems, inventory, combat, UI, networking. The goal: strip World of Warcraft down to its true skeleton and rebuild on clean, modular systems.
Get rid of the 2004 era duct tape.
Precisely. Avoid being haunted by legacy code that causes bugs, limits features, slows things down. Massive job, but essential for a true fresh start.
After the tech cleanse.
Step 4. Pin out the basics of the world's story. Not writing quests yet, but defining what the new world means. Reframing the core conflict, maybe freedom versus control, order versus chaos, creating a living lore framework.
How do the old characters fit in? How does the story respond?
That's what this step defines. How legacy characters exist, how their stories evolve persistently, building the philosophical and narrative guidelines for a world that responds to players. Foundation for emergent story.
And finally, after all that,
The crucial decision. Decide where to truly begin. Choose a compelling starting spark, a continent under siege, a regional conflict. Launch with curated starter zones for a strong first impression, but crucially keep the rest of the world accessible for exploration, sandbox play from day one.
a decision earned by the previous steps.
Exactly, ensuring a strong, deliberate, open-ended start that immediately shows the game's new philosophy.
The grand outcome of all this. The analysis concludes it's potentially profound, not just the next Warcraft.
No, the vision is for the first real next-gen mmorpg that truly deserves that title. Designed not as a static game, but a world platform, a living, moddable, explorable experience that could genuinely outlive the original by a mile.
Wow.
It's a vision that could maybe end genre fatigue for players tired of the same old MMO loops, potentially start a new era for online RPGs by focusing on player agency, persistence, dynamic worlds, all on a clean, modern foundation.
It really embodies that strength of simplicity, doesn't it? Stripping away the baggage to reveal a powerful, adaptable core, building a game to be inhabited, shaped by its community.
That's the core idea.
So we've really explored today how even a beloved billion-dollar company can get trapped by its own success, its own legacy, clinging to complex systems, steady revenue that maybe no longer serve the audience or bring in new blood. But we've also seen the incredible power of a simple, clear, player-centric vision, one that cuts through the noise, embraces modularity, puts player experience and agency first. It's a powerful argument that sometimes the most radical solution really is the simplest one, a complete reset, acknowledging the past but looking firmly to the future.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling final question, I think. For an established company, is this painful, drawn-out delay in adopting radical, player-aligned changes just a necessary consequence of scale, of risk aversion, a slow, maybe inevitable evolution?
Or is it a fundamental failure to listen, a resistance to change that only breaks down when the game is slowly vanishing, finally forcing them to agree to what players wanted all along, but with this huge, maybe near fatal delay?
What does it truly take for an old giant to shed its skin and be reborn?
It's a question that goes way beyond just gaming, doesn't it? It touches on innovation, corporate inertia, and the critical importance of actually listening to the voices that matter. We'll leave you to mull over that one.